All right. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for everybody still joining us today. And at this point, just to quickly recap, earlier today we talked about manufacturing law. And for this third session, we would be focusing more on production planning, shop floor control, and quality control. So with that, we might as well make use of our blank sample database and show you how easy it is to activate and set up production planning. So let me go to that database. All right. So this is the sample database there. And as you would expect, you install the module the normal way in Sage. Just for those who are not too familiar with Sage, let me show you in the Sage 300 program path. Uh, Everything we discussed earlier today was in manufacturing 7.3, manufacturing lot 7.3, and then for this afternoon, we are talking about production planning 7.3a. So the folders are in the program path of Sage. After we install, for us to be able to use it, we need to do a data activation. So here is the data activation for production planning 7.3. Next, activate. So done. And then you can now see the production planning module. We don't need to do any database setup anymore because, of course, production planning module is sharing that with manufacturing order module already. Notice that it is a separate module. That means it has its own license. So again, we need to register the client license or the demo license for the partners in the registration window under the production planning setup. Now, among the setup files that you can see at the moment, actually there's only one that is a must to be able to run production planning in any way. That is the distribution network. So this is the only setup that you have to do. And after this, we can actually run a plan already. So this is network one. So let's just call this network one. And for today, it is our network one. Uh, okay. What does a network do? It actually just groups together locations in Sage 300. It determines the scope of the plan. So maybe to make it a little bit realistic, uh, maybe my plan is comprised of the West Coast. So this is my location in Seattle and my location in Vancouver. So this would be my West Coast network. And nothing is stopping us from creating any number of network for the East Coast, Central. We can combine all of the locations into North America, the whole world. Technically, it's just a combination of locations. It tells us the scope. The system assumes anything, all the locations within one network can share stock balances, shares the same demand and supply lines. So when we create network one, we are essentially combining all of the SOs, POs, stock balances, MOs for these two locations. It's also useful to exclude certain locations. So if, let's say, you create a reject scrap QC location and you don't want them to be considered uh, when you are generating an MRP plan, that would be done using the distribution network. All right. So that's the setup involved. But maybe before I do a transaction, let's just quickly recap what is meant to be done by the production planning module first. maybe for those who are not really familiar with it. When we say production planning, we're actually referring here to generating a full MRP plan. MRP referring to material requisition planning or material requirement planning. So we just want Sage to generate a advice as to what should be produced, when and how many, and then for us to be able to meet that manufacturing plan, Sage also needs to generate a purchase plan of what needs to be purchased in terms of raw material and packaging materials, when and how many. So the goal of MRP is to have enough stock at any given time to meet demand, both projected and actual. At the same time, prevent any excess stock on hand. So you're trying to prevent shortage, but you're also trying to prevent overstocking. That's essentially what MRP is trying to do. Now, with that in mind, let's uh, let's check what is already available in Sage. So the inventory control module contains all of our stock balances. So this is our main supply line. The PO module in Sage contains the purchase requisitions and the purchase orders. So these are incoming stock that we can recognize. We can see the date when they are expected to be received. The manufacturing order in MF tells us what products, semi-finished goods, are incoming as well. At the same time, the MOs also tell us what raw materials, packaging materials have demand in those MOs. So it's both a demand and supply line. And then the order entry module of Sage is containing all of the outstanding back order sales orders that we need to ship out. So this is the demand side of it. So with the demand and supply together, we have enough information to create an MRP plan. So a while ago in the PP setup, we have already defined our distribution network. At this point in time, we can actually already go into the PP transaction planning run to generate a MRP plan. But of course, this is not the most ideal plan. It doesn't consider minimum stock levels, lead time, anything to that sort. But technically, I can run the plan already once we have created a network, which is, let's say, the West Coast. So you can see here that I can have as many as 5 plans per network. Actual run is the one that we are actually using. Simulations 1 to 4 is left for the planners to play around with the data. So maybe simulation 1 is optimistic plan. My forecasts, my sales orders, demand are the highest. Simulation 2 could be the pessimistic plan. Uh, the lowest demand that I can consider. And then simulation 3 and 4, I can play around removing certain parts of the plan from my scope. So this is just to play around with it. The copy button at the bottom allows us to copy any of these simulations to the actual run once we are happy with the planning results. So for today, I'll just use actual run to make it fast. Notice I have here forecast ID. So that means later on, we can add forecast as another demand source. I can use a calendar. So the calendar here implies working days. I can recognize which days are working, which days are not when I'm generating my plan. Underneath, we have the options when we generate our plan. Primarily, you can see, do we want to include stock? So this is referring to the IC stock balances. Do we want to include PO? So this is the purchase orders. Kit is referring to IC kits, sales kits, if you are using them. PR is referring to purchase requisitions in the Sage PO module. You can choose to include or exclude that. And then MO, of course, is the manufacturing orders in manufacturing module. So as I said, it's both demand and supply at the same time. And then SO is the sales orders coming from order entry module. So this is actually your sales demand, right? And actually, I can run the plan at this point. But just to make our first run a bit more interesting, what I'll do is just create a sales order demand for our FG001 item a while ago. So this is just a standard sales order in Sage 300. And just to illustrate, let's say for FG001, let's say there's an actual sales order on May 18, maybe for 22, just to make it easy to spot. And to also illustrate the effect of the network, so you can see I am putting the demand actually in location 4. Let's say this is now for May 21 for, let's say, 13 pieces. And then again, one last FG001 line here in location 2, maybe on the 19th for 66. So this is now an actual sales order for our FG001. And let's go back to our planning run screen and just trigger a planning run. So this is now taking a snapshot of the situation in Sage, all demand lines, all supply lines, and then gathering information for us to see using the inquiries. We start off with the planning inquiry summary, wherein I can look at the West Coast plan. I can look at all items up to when, so maybe at this point only up to June, end of June. This checkbox allows us to filter for only items which require intervention by the planner. So that means things I need to purchase or things that I need to produce. If there is no plan or no need for intervention, we don't really need to check it. And okay, let me just see. So, okay, this is not, right now what we're seeing is our FG001 is not even in this list because there is no demand necessary or no action to be taken. But notice that we're highlighting several items here that in my test database has negative stock. That is why the system is asking us to just produce or buy enough to set them back to zero. So let's filter all items then, and then look at our FG001. So this is now the sample product that we created a while ago. And I can see that currently we have 23 on hand. I still have 15 on order. So these are the MOs that we created a while ago and not yet closed. Right now, it is able to see a actual demand of 35. So that is actually the sales orders we created a while ago. If we don't do anything, we would end up with 3. And there is actually no need at this moment to do anything. No need to produce, no need to buy. If I open the detailed inquiry, so this is now uh, the way to look at it in more detail. Let me just move the columns around. I'll just move the action column at front to highlight it. All right. So this is now the detailed inquiry wherein I can see for item FG001, I have 23 currently on hand. These are the open MOs, MO4, MO5. How many? 5 and 10. This is currently due today. I did not change the order date and due dates. So I think I can receive 15 today on top of 23 to end up with 38. And I can see 2 sales orders, order 123 for 22 pieces and 13 pieces on May 18. You can see it at the due date here, and May 21. So this test run is showing us, one, we can see sales orders as demand lines. Two, it is considering only locations 1 and 4. So location 2, demand line was totally ignored by the plan because of the network setting, right? And then 3, if there is no action to be taken, then the planners doesn't need to do anything at this point. I have enough stock to meet future demand. No need to produce, no need to buy. If the finished good item is that way, then we can also see that for raw material 1, which is our sample raw material, I have 166 on hand. I have an open MO, which I haven't issued the raw materials yet. I would end up with 161, and that is good enough. I don't need to do anything as well. For raw material 2, the same. So I have 348 on hand. I still have demand to be issued to the MOs at 10 each. I will end up with 348. There's no need to do anything for those 3 items. Now let's change that status quo in the next run. But this is just to show you that the only setup that we need to trigger or start doing a planning run is the distribution network. Now, we have to make the plan more realistic. So how do we do that? Now we go into the PP setup, item planning table. So this is the main master file for PP. Oops, I was trying to make it bigger, but okay. So doesn't look that nice. Okay, let me go back. So this is now how we are defining for our finished good item, FG001, network 1, which is the West Coast. Is it something that I want to manufacture or purchase? Notice that a while ago, the system already knows that FG001 has a bomb. It was assumed to be manufactured already, but the planning module allows us to dictate whether the system should plan to produce or to purchase. So this is dependent on the client planning, the planning department. It's possible that a product is produced on the West Coast, but the same product from the plan of the East Coast is purchased. So you can override whether an item is to be manufactured or purchased, uh, regardless of whether it has a bomb or not. So for our example today, we want it to be manufactured. Create order is asking us if we want the system to do an action, to either purchase or produce this. If you set it to no, then the system is just calculating the shortage without generating any action to resolve it. So this is sometimes done for stock items that are not as important, so maybe bond paper or tissue paper. So typically it is yes for things that we plan for. And then notice now that I have here several parameters that we will be discussing in detail. So the main one is minimum stock. So we can set up in the system that we want Sage or production planning module to always maintain a certain stock level at any given time. So with or without demand, I want to have always 25 pieces inside the warehouse. And then with that, I can add this without changing anything else. Go back to our planning run screen and trigger a net run. So notice that we have 2 buttons here, a rerun or run, of course, the first time we do it, or net run. So rerun actually deletes the plan, starts from scratch, re-explodes the bomb, and then creates the action recommendation. Net run assumes that there is no change in the bomb. It just gets the latest demand supply information and refreshes the plan. So it's a bit faster than run. So after the planner generates a full run, it is possible to do net runs. But of course, the assumption is there's no change in BOM. And if we go now into the detailed inquiry screen and refresh for FG001, what we would see here is just the minimum stock alone is enough to trigger us a planning run, a planned order to be generated. Why is that? Because today, which is May 8th, we only have 23 on hand, and in the future there is now going to be a sales order that needs to be shipped out, and we won't have enough stock to maintain a minimum stock level of 25. So right now, the system is recommending that before on May 18, we need to produce 9 more pieces of FG001 to end up with 47 on hand. After we ship 22, we would end up with exactly 25. And then on May 21, again, we need to produce 13 pieces so that we end up with 38, after which shipping 13 reverts us back to our minimum stock level of 25 pieces. So this is now the manufacturing advice, the planned orders being recommended by PP. It is based on due date and a document date, which is the order date. Right now, we don't have any manufacturing lead time. So the system is thinking magically that I can order on May 21 and receive on May 21 and have it ready to be shipped on May 21 within that same day. So if, of course, if the production run is so fast, maybe, but in most cases, that's not possible. So this is the plan for the finished good. Now, let's look at the plan for the raw materials 1 and 2. So in this case, we have demand coming from our existing MO4. Notice now that there is an additional demand line, usage MO, coming from the planned orders. So the system knows for FG001, because of sales order 123, I will be creating a production run on May 18 and May 21. But for this component item, I still have enough. I don't need to buy raw material. The same for raw material too, I guess. So I can see the two MOs, and this is the two new planned production runs, but I still have enough. So no recommendation to purchase. So for us to change that, again, we go back to the item planning table. This time for raw material 1, let's start from scratch because otherwise you have residual data there. So raw material 1 for network 1, this time around we want it to be purchased because it's a raw material. For minimum stock, maybe we want to say that please maintain at least 150 always as minimum stock. And then for raw material 2, for network 1, we want to have at least 250 as minimum stock. So this is now based on the plan here. Oh, no. For RM2, it's still good enough. So let's just make it a little bit higher, 300. And then for raw material 1, the ending stock is 139. So that's good enough. So 300 and 150. So with that, I'll go back to the planning run, not just do a net run again. So no change on the finished good item for raw material 1. we are now forcing the system because of my minimum stock level. It knows it only needs to buy on May 21, just 11, to meet this stock level requirement. For raw material 2, excuse me, there is now a create PO recommendation only on May 21 again, so that it will meet the 300 minimum stock level requirement. So now what else can we do? So for FG001, aside from the minimum stock requirement, I might want to tell the system that I don't want to produce less than 10 at any given time. So that is the minimum order quantity. Maybe this is due to scales of, what do we call that? To make it more efficient, scales of mass production purposes. I don't want to produce less than 10. And maybe I also want to have an order multiple of 5. So that means the minimum order quantity would be 10, and then I can only increment by 5. So that's now putting into effect these parameters. We can do the same for raw material 001. So for the purchased item, maybe the vendor refuses to ship to us if it's less than 50, and then each packing is by 10. So it's 50, 60, 70. For raw material 2, we can set up the same thing. So in this case, maybe it's by 50s, and then the order multiple is by 25, just for example. So these are parameters to play with. And then if we do a net run, then now production planning would be adjusting towards those parameters. So with that, we go back to FG001. If you remember the original plan a while ago, it was to produce on May 18 and May 21. What has changed is the order quantity. So it cannot just produce what it wants. It needs to produce based on the minimum order quantity. It's actually resulting to a net excess stock of 1, but we're trying to minimize it as best as we can. And then on the next production run, I can produce or order 15, which is 10 with multiples of 5. And after meeting all of the demand, now we have an extra on-hand stock of 3 beyond our minimum stock level, which is 38. All right. If we look at raw material 1 now, that plan from the finished good product rolls downwards. So the planned orders for the top item, FG001, is 10 and 15. And regardless of their demand, the system knows it needs to buy at least 50. For RM002, the same. So we need to at least buy 50 so that the vendor will deliver to us. So that's already an example of MRP with the planning parameters being taken into account. All right. So now, just to make it a bit more interesting, let's add in more demand. So maybe let's add forecast. So under the production planning module, there is now the forecast entry screen, and I can create, let's say, a sales forecast for 2026. And then I will put in here for June for FG001. Okay, I meant this one. For location 1, maybe there's a forecast of, let's just say, 45. And then I'll just make 3 lines here. So July, FG001, let's say 65, and then for August, let's say 55. So this is now my forecast for this item across 3 months. And of course, I can always import this from Excel. I don't need to do it manually. And then we can go back to our planning run screen, do a select forecast ID. So we want this to be considered, not run. All right. So if we go back to our planning inquiry summary, planning inquiry detail, okay, even the summary is fine now. So if we look at up to end of, well, up to September, only for items for to be planned, you can now see that FG001, RM1, RM2 are included in this summary plan already, and we can drill down to the detailed inquiry. But you can see for FG001, there is now a forecast demand of 165. The total planned orders being recommended is 190, and then we will end up with a stock on hand of 28. So if we want to see that detailed plan for FG001, you can now see that aside from the sales orders that we created a while ago, you can see that we have planned orders being generated to meet the forecasted demand in June, July, and August. And you can see the planned orders is just matching that requirement, always just producing enough to maintain always our minimum stock level. And if we look at now RM001, it is the same. So the plan of finished good one has changed. This results to demand for the components, and eventually we now have to create purchase orders to be able to meet the demand for FG001 for raw material one. So again, this is to illustrate the relationship between the top item and its component. Be aware or just note that the system is actually designed to support up to 16 levels of BOM. So right now we're just looking at one level BOM, or well, two level BOMs, I'm sorry. But even if it's as deep as 16 levels, the system will just carry over the demand and then explode the bomb and then plan accordingly. Now, this also brings up maybe one question that you might be wondering about. Why do we need MRP module? Why not just create a crystal report that's looking at demand and supply and then create recommendations? So the reason why it doesn't work that way is because of the bomb levels. So imagine if you have a 3, 4, 5 level bomb. For an MRP plan to be correct, it needs to know at what level of the bomb the item is. We need to plan first for the items on top, the level 1 first, before we can carry down its demand lines to level 2, from level 2 down to level 3, down to level 4, down to level 5. So if you cannot explode bombs in your report, there's no way for you to create a crystal report that can correctly plan an MRP recommendation. I need to plan first for all finished good levels, top one, before going down to level 2. Otherwise, it will be wrong. If you start from the bottom up, then obviously everything is not correct anymore. So that's the main reason why we need MRP, not just a custom report. With this plan, Let's also take the chance before we add new parameters to it to create a sample PO. So I'll just create a PO. This is just to highlight that the system is taking into account all demand supply lines. So let's say this one, I'll just create one here, RM001 for location one. Maybe I have a PO dated, expected arrival date. Maybe let's put it to May 25. So this is a PO, and then I'll just add for RM002 the same, maybe also 100, also on the same date. I should have just put it in the header, May 25. So this is a PO. Now just note, while we are on this screen, the system is only considering active and future orders. The same for the SO. So if you're using the SO type or PO type, just note that we are only looking at active and future. For standing and blanket, it's not useful for planning purposes because Sage mainly uses that for template purposes. It's not really a future, it's not really a order. So now we have PO, we have SO, we have forecast. And then let's go back to our item planning table and add another parameter to the finished good item. This time, let's put in a setup lead time. So maybe every time I produce, I need at least 1 day per batch to set up the machine. And then for each piece of item, let's just say that I need, because of the number, maybe like uh, 0.1 day per piece. So note that the unit of measure here is day per piece. And right now I'm manually defining it, but using the BOM, using the operations, it's actually possible to use our production planning, periodic processing to generate lead time. So it can look at the operation routes, add up, check the capacity of each work center, calculate an effective day per piece lead time. But you can see that in the planning item planning table, it's still enabled. So the planner can always override it if they want to. So that is lead time. For the raw material, so I'll just focus on one item here, RM001. Because it is purchased, it only has a purchase lead time. So let's say it's 10 days. So now it knows that if I need to buy something, it has to be 10 days earlier for my vendor to deliver to me on time. So technically, when we say purchase lead time in MRP, we are actually referring to the time it takes you to request internally, have it approved, sent to the customer, confirmed by the, sent to the vendor, confirmed by the vendor shipped to you, you receive, you quality control, put it on a shelf. That total time is purchase lead time. So with that, let's do another planning run and then do a net run this time. And then we can look at the detailed inquiry again. This one. For the finished good item, what has changed? So number one, you can see that we are now looking at lead time. And if I need something, let's say I need to produce 10, notice that if I want it to be available on May 18, I need to start producing it by May 17. So this 2-day lead time is because of this setup lead time plus the runtime. So if I want to produce 10, then it's 10 times 0.1, so that's 1 day, plus 1 equals 2 days. If I needed to produce, just for example, 55 pieces, then it's 1 day for setup plus 5.5. So that would be roughly 7 days. So for us to receive something on August 1, we need to order it on July 26. That is how the system is making use of the manufacturing lead time. For the raw material one item, we actually added a PO. So notice now that there is a PO 76 that the system can recognize. It knows it is for 100 pieces. Originally, the due date is May 25, but the system is actually suggesting us to expedite the order from May 25 to May 19, so that it would meet our minimum stock requirements and prevent another planned order. Uh, when the system needs to actually purchase something, it's now uh, creating a order date of, in this case, if I need something on June 24, I need to order it on June 15. And between those dates are the 10 days lead time. Okay. And then going back to the item planning table, I can also play around with the maximum order quantity, but this one is just to split orders. So for purchasing, it's not always the case, but for manufacturing, some clients, they have a policy that they cannot, let's say, order, the maximum order quantity may be 30. So once they hit this limit, they have to split it into 2 orders. So we can do that by putting in maximum order quantities. And then another thing that we can play with later on is maximum stock. But before that, maybe I want to plan on a monthly basis. So this is another control that we can do. We call it schedule. And by default, we set it to none. So none means lot per lot. If we do it monthly or weekly, it's actually just combining the demand of 1 week and then putting the uh, demand line on Monday to be resolved. Or monthly, then it will just put it on the first day of the month and then resolve it then. So it's usually mainly used for purchasing, but this time I'll do it on manufacturing. And the reasoning could be because of the sourcing. So let's say, imagine if you are buying from China or India. So maybe you don't want to order every day a new order. You would want to combine them into just one big order. So if we go back to the detailed inquiry for FG001, what you can see is because we set it to a schedule of monthly, the system knows that I have a sales order 123 on May 18 and May 21. The system just combines it together and treats it as May 1 demand. And the system now is trying to produce enough to be able to meet that May 1 demand. So of course, it's appearing as pre-planned because now it's already May 8. So pre-planned just means this recommendation predates the planning date today. Another thing that we can see here is notice that the system is implementing a maximum order quantity of 30. So instead of just creating 65 or 45, it's actually splitting the orders to 30 and 15, 30, 30 and 5, and then 30 and 25. So that is the usage of the schedule as well as the maximum order quantity. So let's just remove them because it's a bit hard to see. And then let's change our planning tool to a maximum stock. So let's say I want to implement now a planning concept called maximum stock. So this is actually a new feature that we have added in version 73 only. So for some of you who might be using production planning, this is a new feature that you can play with. So I have now a maximum stock setting, which I can then trigger or change my planning run parameter to order to maximum stock. So let's do that and show you the effect. So previously, the system was always planning against minimum stock. It only purchases enough to be able to maintain that minimum stock. But for some clients, they want to actually produce to a maximum stock to minimize the frequency of doing planning runs. Because they have the space, they have an allocated space for this product on the production floor or warehouse floor. They will want to produce as much of that item as the maximum stock, slowly consume it over time, and then produce again once we hit that minimum stock requirement. So that's what the order to maximum stock function is doing. And if we go back to the detailed plan for FG001, I'll just make this bigger. You can see that now I have a maximum stock setting, and every time it generates a planned order, it's actually producing up to that quantity. And then it's hard to see. Let me change it to a little bit better. Okay, I will double it. Let's say 150. Okay, and then let's do another run again. Because the demand was roughly at the same time, so at the same value, so hard to see. So you can see. So originally we were having planned orders almost on a monthly basis, but now because we have a 150 maximum stock setting, the system knows it can produce up to 130, up to roughly 150, and then now I have enough to meet this demand until it now starts to hit again our minimum stock of 25. That's why I will again produce 178 to ship out this number and end up with 150 again. So this is the net quantity column here is showing the difference between our actual stock versus our minimum stock requirement. So just how far away are you from minimum stock level? In this kind of plan, we are always producing up to the maximum, slowly consuming to the minimum stock. So just know this is something that the client can use if they want to. Now, if I implement this plan for the finished good one item, obviously it will affect our raw material item as well. So the MO requirement for FG001 has been pushed ahead for this quantity and this quantity. And now we are saying that we have a shortage at this point because of the lead time. We now have to expedite this order to meet that. And then moving forward, I need to create PO, this quantity and this quantity to be able to meet my minimum stock level for RM001. So those planning parameters are the main tools that is used by our planning department to generate an MRP plan for our finished good item and our raw materials, finished item, semi-finished item, raw material, and packaging material. All right. Now, what else can we do? So, in the production planning module, uh, one thing that I need to highlight so that we don't over promise to our clients is when we talk about forecast, note that we don't generate forecast really. So we only can plan against forecasts. Our system is not designed to really generate a forecast for the client to directly use. So under the periodic processing, we do have a generate sales forecast function wherein I can copy maybe a forecast for 2025 to create a forecast for 2026 and then maybe add 10%. So if the client needs something as simple as that, then yes, we can do it, of course. If they are only looking at sales history, maybe I can extract the sales history from 2025, looking at the sales tables of OE, add 10%, and then have it be used as my forecast for 2027. Again, that's easy enough to do. But in the real world, forecasting is not that simple. Typically, clients would want to make use of certain models for different products. So it's not straightforward. It's not necessarily just looking at the history plus certain percentages. So this part we don't do. So there are third-party solutions that actually just focus on forecast generation. For production planning, AutoSimpler, we are only planning against the forecast. We don't claim to be generating forecast enough, at least for the client to use directly. All right. So that's about the forecasting. Another uh, important functionality supported in the forecast part of it is forecast consumption. So notice here that we have forecast consumption, whereby we can either set it up to be how many days forward or how many days backward. So what do we mean by that? So here I have a June 1 forecast for FG001 of 45. So forward consumption means that this forecast is valid for the periods from June 1 to roughly June 30. If I have a sales order that comes in and falls within that date range, the forecast can be automatically consumed. This allows us to combine uh, actual forecasts with sales orders, actual demand, and not overstate the demand for the period of time. So let's play around with that. So let's use August 1 as an example. For August 1, we have a sales forecast of 55. And then right now, let's create a sales order for this customer. Okay, FG001. This is now for August, let's say August 10. And the quantity, just to make it easy to spot, let's set it to 33. So I can post the sales order 124 for August 10. And when we now go back to our planning run, do a net run, what you would see here, excuse me, is for the detailed inquiry for FG001, you can see sales order 124, August 10, and you can see that the forecast, originally it was 55, was consumed by this sales order. So from 55, it was reduced to 22. And if I get another order of 25, that forecast would have been fully consumed, and I would have a sales order of 25 appearing for August. So this is the forecast consumption automatically being done by the system so that we can generate a plan that includes both sales orders and sales forecast. So those are just things that you can play with with regards to planning. Now, another feature that we have added, but it's not, maybe it's not so, okay. Maybe what I'll do is I'll switch to our sample database and then so that you can see more data. So this is SAM LTD. And what I wanted to show you next is actually under the planning run window. Notice that I have an option here to limit the planning run only to item planning table or to a specific item group. So this is another new feature that we have added to version 7.3. So only the latest 2026 version of planning has this functionality. In the past, in older version, I only have an option to limit it to item planning table. So what does that mean? So the planning item planning table was the table we were playing with a while ago. So this setting here. And the idea here is it could be that Sage has 10,000 item codes, but from an MRP planning point of view, the planner only cares about 1,000 of them. So the rest doesn't matter. That's why I can set up only the item planning table for the 1,000 items I care about. And then when I run my planning run, I just say to limit it to the item planning table. So that's just one way of doing it to speed up processing, remove from the scope of the item plan items that are not relevant to the planner. Okay? Now, just beware, if we use limit planning run to item planning table, if you forget to define the item planning table for a new item or a new component, then obviously we will not see it in the planning run and it will not be included at all. So just be aware that it's actually a delimiter. It limits the scope of the planning run only to the item planning table. Even if there's demand supply for an item outside of that item planning table, we don't see it. So just be aware of that limitation. But the new functionality is about item group. So that means in the PP setup, I mean, there is a new table called item group. And now this is where our planners can create any number of item groups, select which items belong to that group, and then allow them to trigger a planning run specific only to that group while exploding its bomb. So the usage now here is maybe the planner would want to create a plan run specific to maybe like top 10 items or a specific product group that has critical importance to the client. So this is now how I would set it up. This is the grouping for that. And then when I run my plan, I can just trigger a net run while exploding the bomb. So even though the group only has 4 items inside, the plan is not limited to just those 4. It is actually, if I open the planning inquiry summary here, actually everything up to, let's say, September, it's looking at those 4 products together with any semi-finished good or raw materials underneath. So it's a fully exploded bomb, but limited to those 4 top products. That's what the system is looking at when it generated that plan. So again, this is a very useful function. It speeds up the planning run gets results immediately for the planner to plan for like emergency situations. But there is also a risk that you might not have included a product that might be also consuming the same component. So that is the risk for us because we're limiting it now to those four products only, right? So the ideal way of using this item group function is to maybe look at it from a critical component perspective. So if I have a critical component, let's say oil nowadays, if oil is my critical resource, I can then generate maybe a MRP plan that is limited to products that use that oil, that specific oil. And then that way, even though it's not a complete plan, from the perspective of that oil, we are getting the correct results. So it's like using the MF were used inquiry backwards. So if for whatever reason SF00, wait, not that, let's say PM001 is a critical component, I can then use the were used inquiry. I know that this item is only used by this parent codes. I can then create a MRP plan limited to these three items. And I'm sure I would have captured the correct demand supply situation for PM001. All right. So that's just how we can use the planning group, the limit planning run to item group setting in PP. And then the rest are just some small functionality that we need to quickly cover. Going back to production planning. So the rest are just reports, but of course, eventually, based on the MRP recommendation, the planner can either agree or disagree with it. They can rerun the plan any number of times, but the end result is to generate a MO. So these are things that we need to produce and then generate PR for things that we need to buy. So if I generate a PR, then I can see it here for network one, let's say, only up to a certain time fence, so maybe up to July only, to be purchased where. And this is now what the system is recommending us to buy. This is the dates when it should be purchased. This is the quantity of what should be purchased. And at this point in time, I can just select which ones I want to follow as the planner. I can then create a purchase request number 15. That would fall into Sage PO transaction requisition entry. And I would see here request 15 with the following items, quantity, and due date. So from here, it's just a question of how to convert a requisition to a PO. So note, PP only generates requests. We don't generate PO. And the reason why is because the production planning module, MRP, is meant for the planners. It's not buyers. So we don't assume that the planner is also the buyer. The PP MRP plan is just meant to tell you what should be bought, what should be purchased, when, and how many. We don't consider pricing. We don't consider supply chain management, wherein maybe the purchasing department would want to maintain relationships for one component for several vendors just for backup purposes. So all of those decisions is not part of MRP anymore. So we just stop at requisition. If your client is using purchase workflow from Pacific Pack, then we do have a built-in function to generate a purchase request to purchase workflow. So that is another third-party product, which essentially covers the workflow approval of requisition to PO. So that is also supported, but that's not our product anymore. We just support it. So the MO is the same. So we can, of course, generate, going back to production planning. So this is now another way of creating MOs. So this is based on the recommendation of MRP. What should be produced is essentially this network up to when. So let's say up to September 30, to be produced where, approved or released, and extract. So this is just a way to generate MOs. So the rest are just a little bit for reference only for buyer planner maintenance. So it is possible to set up buyers planners and then link them to item planning table. This way, you can filter only for things that the buyer or the planner wants to plan for. So I have 1,000 items, but maybe I only care about 100. Buyer two cares about the other balance. So that could be the situation there. And then the work calendar here allows us to create a calendar to determine which day of the week is a working day and which day specifically are holidays or work days. So this is only used for lead time calculation. So if you use a calendar, the system will, a 10-day lead time would pretty much mean 2 weeks because Saturday and Sunday would be rest days, for example. So you can set this up accordingly. Uh, the last two things about production planning. Number one, we need to highlight to our clients and prospects that planning doesn't include capacity planning. So we only generate material plans, essentially. We don't look at resource constraints, bottlenecks. Uh, Based on demand supply, the system recommends what should be produced, what should be purchased. We don't really care about the sequencing of the order. So do I work on MO1 first, then MO2 or MO3? That kind of machine loading, capacity constraint planning is what we would call like a APS, advanced planning solution, or capacity plan. That is very expensive. So we don't go to that level. And those solutions typically are not auditable. So you cannot audit why they are making that recommendation because they are considering factors that are beyond simple demand supply situations. So number one, we don't do capacity planning. All right. The second thing to highlight here is, well, actually three things. So the second thing is, do note we also have a plan scheduler. So just like what we discussed on the manufacturing scheduler, I can also set up a plan scheduler. It is also on the program path and the shared data path. And I can schedule the production plan to be triggered anytime that I want. So maybe at night, every day, or most of the bigger companies would do MRP planning weekly or monthly. So that's something that can be triggered automatically if they want to. So that's scheduler. The last thing, do note that for actually for both manufacturing and production planning, we actually generate log files. So we put it under the shared data path of Sage. You can see MF and PP folders here. For PP, you can see that we have the log files. And every time we generate an MRP plan, the system is actually creating this log file here, which captures what it's doing, when, and then you can see the step-by-step processing that the system is handling. So if anything goes wrong, let's say an error message occurs, you can look at this log file, check out where did the error occur, at what stage. Is it during the bomb explosion? Was it during extraction of stock POSO information? Which record was it? Maybe you can already guess or figure out why the system was not able to read it. Alternatively, if you don't know the reason, then you can get this log file, send it to us. then we can also help analyze what could have gone wrong. The same for manufacturing. I forgot to highlight this earlier today, but we do have log files for certain transactions. So for example, for Kanban, for backflush. So if I go into this folder here, I can see, let's say, what the Kanban process generated as a log file. And if something goes wrong during Kanban or backflush process, you can look at this log file as well to check maybe that there's an error message that the system was able to capture. All right. So that's essentially production planning. At this point, let's go to the next topic, which is shop floor control. So this is the module that we use to keep track of the transaction entries or the time entries of the operators on the production floor. So the goal here now is for production management to generate data they can use for efficiency analysis. So management now wants to know how good or how bad a specific production run is. They also want to see the status on a real-time basis of where we are per manufacturing order based on the operation. So if I have an MO number one that needs assembly and packing, I want to know how many has been assembled right now, how many has already been packed or as of right this moment. So that is shop floor status. That's the second reason why we're using it. And then the third reason is uh, utilization. So at the end of a period, let's say a month or a quarter, production management wants to be able to generate an analysis or report to see how much was a specific operator or station used. So how much idle time versus runtime utilization in effect for that station. So those are the three main reasons why we are doing it. To be able to do a shop floor record, we just need to add a little bit more on top of the data that we have in manufacturing order. So first, we need to create shifts. So we want to create shift one, shift two, shift three. So this is mainly for reporting purposes. Then we need to add operator codes. So if in case somebody like a production clerk is encoding the production time of operators, we need to know who are the operators and which shift do they belong to, so you can see how the shift is assigned here. And then we need to know stations. So in manufacturing order, we were able to define what we call work centers. So we said we can think of it as machine or production line. Now, it's possible that for that work center, so let's say cutting or assembly work center, there could be more than one machine doing the same thing. So like I have two or three lines doing the same thing. So that is now what we call a station. So this is assembly one machine, maybe assembly two machine, both part of work center one. And now I can also say by default, how many hours do we have per station? And then I also need to define what we call reason codes. So whenever there is a breakdown of machine, that's a downtime. Uh, Whenever there's a stoppage, for example, like general assembly meetings, that's an indirect stoppage. So I can have a reason for that. And then whenever we want to record any form of rework, we can also provide a reason. So we have reason codes for these three types of situation. And then we want to limit the choices of the operators based on these reason codes. That's why we need to map it to each work center. So if I'm doing assembly, the reason that rework happens would be very different from why a rework occurred for cutting and packaging operations. So this is now how you are defining it. Now, lastly, we would also need to define a user master and user security. So this is now just to define a default setting for each user that might be logging into ShopFloor control. So by default, who is this operator? What operation does he do? Is it assembly, cutting, or molding? Normally, what work center is he working on? Specifically, which station? And what is the default transaction type that he would be doing? So these are just defaults that can be overridden during the ShopFloor input stage. And then lastly, I have here a shop transaction type. Do we want it to be time entry, or do we want it to be like a stopwatch start stop method? So this is depending on the type of industry of the client and how good the operators are. So if we choose time entry, it just means that I'm still relying on logbooks or shop travelers. Somebody writes the time there, and then another person is actually recording after the fact. What time? Let's say 9 o'clock to 9:15. Somebody worked on this job to produce how many. That's time entry. If we select start stop, then we are now referring to maybe a tablet on the production floor wherein somebody is using it like a stopwatch. He needs to start doing something, let's say cutting, slicing, printing, and then the moment he finishes doing that particular task, he can just go back to that record and stop it. That would now capture the actual time start stop for that particular operation. So let me just show you first the time entry mode. And if we go to the shop floor screen, it looks like this. So this is now the shop floor module. You can see that I have here start time. So let's say from 8 o'clock to maybe 8:10. What was the user doing? Maybe it was setup time. So who was involved? Which MO was in action? So let's say MO number 3. By default, I have operation 100, work center 1, station 1. But maybe for whatever reason, he changed to station 2. And this is now 8 o'clock to 8:10. And maybe from 8:11 to 8:25, maybe it's now runtime. This operator, again, MO number 3, the same station as station 2. Maybe I have produced 2 already, but somehow lost 1. And I can put here a story, made a mistake, and save. So that is time entry mode. And typically, this is a situation where somebody, a production secretary, is encoding the time of multiple users on the floor. All right. Now, this is less than ideal, mainly because there's a time delay. So maybe the production floor records on a logbook or a shop traveler. At the end of the shift, they submit it to a production clerk. The production clerk encodes it in shop floor. So I'm getting the same information, but maybe like 8 hours behind. The same, if I'm looking at it from a MO operation status perspective, I'm also a bit behind. So the most ideal way to use barcode, to use ShopFloor, I mean, is to use barcode with it. So again, we go back to our barcode module from yesterday. This time around, we apply it to ShopFloor control. So because our barcode is an app, it can run on mobile phones or tablets. So just imagine putting a tablet on a production floor with this screen. So this is now the barcode ShopFloor screen. the six options that we were talking about earlier is this options being displayed here. So it's setup time, run time, possibly rework, cleanup, and maybe there's downtime and stoppage. So if I was the operator this time around, actually I forgot to change my setting here. Give me a minute. So go back to setup, user master. This time around, we want to do start stop mode already. So let me just log out here and refresh. So now when I do my ShopFloor entry, so maybe I'm doing runtime. So I'm starting a new record. You can see that it's actually capturing current time. So it's 4:21 p.m. And who am I? Operator one, because that's the one that I linked to my user. Which MO are we working on? So let's just use MO number 3. So everything here by default is what I'm normally using as the operator. I don't need to change it as much, but I can if I have to. I can then start. So this is now 4:21. I'm doing maybe cutting, slicing, or printing, assembly. So after a certain amount of time, I can then stop it. So now it's 4:22. It's actually just 1 minute, but maybe I've already produced one and then post. So this is now the start stop method using the barcode app. And with barcode app, we can then extend 6300 to 20, 30, 40, 50 operators on the floor. Let them log in as themselves, capture their time, and then make shop floor recording real time. So now I can see who is working on which job. From a management point of view, I can go now into my shop floor MO operation query and then see, let's say for MO number 3, for just assembly, what kind of time records were created, how good, how bad it is. I ordered how much has already been produced, and then here I can open the detailed inquiry as well, so I can see what was the start and stop time involved for this particular record. So that's from the point of view of MO status. If I want to look at it from a, I'm sorry, if I want to look at it from a utilization point of view, I can look at station, select, let's say, which station, as of when, and then extract. So at this point right now, I'm only utilizing it for 21%, 0.21%, because it's even less than 0.02 hours. That's 1 minute. So here, of course, after, let's say, the end of the month or the end of the day, I would see how much extra time do we have for that station. All right. So that's what ShopFloor is doing. Maybe just very quickly, I'll show you downtime. So maybe if something goes wrong, notice that this is the user. There's no MO involved. I just need to say why. Maybe it's a machine breakdown, overheat, start. This is now the start time of the machine breakdown. And then after I fixed it, tested it, I can then go back and capture how much time did it take and then post. So that's essentially ShopFloor control. Just to wrap up ShopFloor control, just see here that we do have some options here. So do we want to consume WIP? So remember when we were talking about manufacturing order earlier today, we have some extra uh, optional transaction of consuming WIP. If the client is using ShopFloor control, the WIP consumption can be linked to the operation. As I'm doing a receipt quantity at operation assembly, the system can automatically consume the WIP for assembly as well. So this is just an option for us. to do that. I can also set up my ShopFloor control to be only total time input. So maybe I don't care about 8 o'clock to 8:30. I just want to put 30 minutes. So at the end of the day, we get the same efficiency reports, but there is no start stop or stop clock involved, just total end time required. This third option here involves checking of shop receipt quantity. So if you activate function, the system will check that the quantity of operation 1 output cannot be exceeded by operation 2 output. So if I assemble 10, there's no way that you can pack more than 10. It would be at least maximum of 10 only. So that is the shop receipt quantity validation. And then these two options on top is very seldomly used. But just in case, if you want MOs costing to make use of the shop floor time multiplied by the resource cost, that is possible. But then you have to turn this on and this one to generate the ledger entries properly. But this requires the client to be able to record the shop floor times almost in real time together with the MO closeout. So if the client cannot do that and there are multiple BOM levels in between, it might be too difficult to capture time and have it reflect in the MO simultaneously. So typically, we don't recommend it. It's only we only use the times in ShopFloor control for purposes of analysis, not as cost for the MO normally. So that's just some of the options in ShopFloor control. And just so that we don't run out of time, let me just jump now to the quality control module. So with that, maybe it's easier to go to our TST001 sample database. And then here, I can just go in, data activate, and again, quality control is a separate module. Of course, ShopFloor as well is a separate module. So if we want to activate it, this is the quality control module, activate. And the moment we activate it, uh, just note it affects both manufacturing and purchasing. So this is quality control and quality assurance at the same time. So the moment we activate, you can see that the system will check if MO is in use. So note that quality control module is not limited to just manufacturing. Even if our client is just a trading company, they can actually also use quality control. So this is applying quality control on the PO receipts and IC receipts. Uh, if you are using MO, as the message was saying a while ago, we require you to turn off auto closeout. Why? Because we don't want the MO to be closed before QC is done. So typically what happens in the real world is after they produce the product, it goes into stock during MO receipt, quality control kicks in, checks whether it's accepted or rejected, and we need the MO to be open so that there's still a chance to reverse the receipt in MF. All right. Now with quality control activated, you can see it here, and the QL setup basically requires us to define QC location. So this is the most important setup, whereby we need to say we have a pending QC location, which is a logical location, by the way. So just note this is a logical location. And then we need a reject location. So this is QC reject. This is a physical location and a scrap, QC scrap location. which is physical as well. So what we are doing in the setup is defining or mapping out based on our locations in Sage. So let's say location one. What is the QC pending location? What is the reject location? What is the scrap location? So QC module is primarily using transfer as a way to indicate status. So the moment you receive an item for QC, we would trigger a automatic transfer to put it into a QC location. That was why the QC location is defined as logical. So we don't want people to be shipping out using scrapping from QC location. We want a QC check to happen first. After it has been accepted or rejected, then it's only from those reject or scrap location where the actual uh, scrapping and rejecting can be recorded in Sage. So for now, I'll just set up one location, location one. This is how we have mapped out the QC uh, pending, reject, and scrap location. So that's good enough for today. And then under the QC teams, so we need to at least have one QC team. So this is QC team one. And then we also need to define QC users. So this is who in Sage belonging to which team. So right now I'm just setting one, but imagine now if I have a QC department, I can have team A, team B, team C with different users per team. And now when I'm doing a receiving transaction, I need to assign which team should be doing the quality control. All right. Now, another thing that we need to define is item type. So this is now where we are defining the QC policy for the company. So depending on what we want to do, is it most items are, let's say 90% of items we receive are QC exempted. Only 10% requires QC. That's hopefully the case. But in some cases, maybe some clients think that 90% of things should be quality control, only a small number, 10%, is QC exempted. So whatever is the goal, so I can then create a QC exempted QC type. The team, I'm just assigning it. Right now we have only one. So if this is QC exempt, I can then set it up to be exempted from QC. And then I can create now a QC type 1. So this is QC standard type, for example. And this is linked to a QCP. So I can have as many QC type as I want, but for today, I'll just set up one. And then we go back to options. And now we can say, what is the default QC type? So if we want to say that most items are QC exempt by default, then this should be my default QC type. So anything I don't define to require QC is QC exempt. That's what this means. This is the lowest priority when determining the quality control policy for that item is. All right, so that's lowest priority. Now let's talk about item. This is now the item setup. And you can see here that we actually have a hierarchy of QC policies. So the lowest hierarchy is the default that we set up in the QC options. The next level to that is by vendor group setting. So that means based on my vendor group, I can set it up to belonging to a vendor type, QC type. So imagine if I'm dealing with electronic products, if the vendor belongs to electronic, are they policy one or policy two? So that's the second lowest priority of the QC policy setting. The next level to that is by vendor setting. So specifically, who belongs to this QC type. So it could be electronic, but if it's Samsung, use policy one. If it is Apple, use policy two. So this is how we are setting that up. The next level to that is by item category. So it could be Samsung, but if it's phone, do policy three. If it's refrigerator, use policy four. That's what it means. And then the highest priority is by item. So it could be electronic, Samsung, mobile phone. But if it's a Fold 7, what do I do as QC policy? So in this case, you can see I can select QC type and then specifically what items do I want to belong to that quality control type. So let's say for today, I'll just focus on two items. So A1103, A1105, and then let's do an example of an item with lot A1900G. So these three items are the only items in my current setup that requires quality control. That's what we have just done based on our setup here. And the next quick thing to explain are results. So when we do quality control, it's not limited to just accepting or rejecting an item. What we can do as well is create something very similar to optional fields in quality control, which is what we call test results. So maybe this is result one, whatever that means. Maybe it's type or anything. And this is text, maybe I want to validate. Maybe it's type A or type B. So whatever that means from a quality control point of view. I can also create, let's say, a reason to. So maybe this is numeric. This is now, let's say, an amount, an add. So I have two result types, and then I can link it to a item type. So remember, we created QC type 1, and now I want this test policy to have these two testing results. So by default, I expect A. For result 2, I expect value of 1. So this is now my test results that I want to gather during QC. So now the only remaining thing to do is do a transaction. So let's do a PO receipt. Well, let me just create one first. So now I'm creating a PO for A11030 for, let's say, 50, A1320 for 50, and A1900G for 50. So this is just PO. And now let's do a receipt. So it doesn't matter if I'm doing the receipt via barcode or PO screen. When I receive, the system will check, do I have to do quality control on those items or not? So for this one, let's say I want to receive 50, this one 50, this one 50 as well. And because it's lot track, I want to create 5 lots auto generate. So lot 29 to lot 33, and then post. So this is now the receiving being posted in Sage. And if you noted, if your eyes were fast enough, you would have seen that the system triggered a transfer. If we now go back to quality control, our QL inquiry, pending QC inquiry, it's now showing us that as of today, we have two things that require quality control. It is the A1103 item and the A1900G item. So the second item a while ago was exempted from quality control. So this is now the two items that I need to do quality control on. And based on my team assignment, I would then go into quality control transaction. You can see that I have QC purchasing, QC manufacturing. So this is for PO receipt. This is for MO receipt. This is for IC receipt. So as the item is received into Sage, we basically transfer it to a QC pending location if it is not QC exempted. And then we await the QC team to go in, select which record we are doing a quality control on. So if it is A1103 item, do I accept, reject, or scrap? This is now the test results. So maybe as I'm doing the checking, this is type A, output 1. So this is correct. I can put in any attachment as I want. Eventually say out of the 50, how many was accepted. So this is now a full test, like 100% QC testing. I can put in the quantity that is accepted, and the system, of course, is tracking how much is still pending for quality control. I can create another one this time around for the item with lots. I can do accept or reject because it is lot check. I have to specifically tell the system which lots were we testing. So maybe those three lots. The test result maybe is A and 1. So everything looks good and I can post. If I reject it, so then maybe it's now another situation for A1. You can see that we can't copy the test results from previous runs, but I can choose to ignore that. Maybe I need to reject lot number 33 for whatever reason. I can then put in the test result. Maybe in my testing, for some reason, I got the quantity 2. And this is now reject for that item. If we look at A11030 under the inventory control module, transaction history, so A11030, well, we can look at A110 first. You can see that we have location 1 and QC location. If I drill down to QC, when we did the PO receipt, it automatically moved 50 of that item to pending QC location. And a while ago, we accepted 25. So I know from an inventory control perspective that there is still 25 left in QC pending, awaiting processing. If we look at the lot number inquiry, so for A1900G, the same information can be seen. So now I have the different lots. There is 10 is in reject location, and then there are still a couple in QC. The rest are back in location 1. And of course, if we drill down to the transaction, I can see it was received, transferred to pending, eventually returned to the receiving location. So we do this for IC receipt as well as MO receipt. The only extra transactions here are purchase return and QC return. So if after an item is rejected, maybe I need to return it either to the vendor or return it to the production floor for rework or just reject totally. So we can do that using QC purchase return here. I can show you. We did one reject already for that batch. How many can I return? So maybe I damaged one really for testing purposes. I cannot return it anymore. Or if, let's say, I can return all, which specific lot are we returning? And then I can post this. And this is now transferring the lot back to the receiving location and automatically posting a PO return entry. So this RE00001 would be reflected in Sage PO transaction return entry. I could see that here, so you can see this is what was returned based off the QC test result. Okay, and then lastly for QC module, something that we have already received, maybe I need to do another round of quality control. So that is why we have here a generate QC entry function, wherein maybe after I have received it, over time it's getting nearer to expiration date, then I want to extract and do another round of testing, or maybe it rained hard yesterday and some items got wet. So maybe A11030 got wet, and I can extract them out. So from QC location 1, I need to, let's say, get 41 pieces out of location 1 and then trigger another round of testing. So this 41 pieces would be awaiting QC inventory, and I can see them here. So this is the 41 pieces. So we out of the automatically based on the item type or vendor type during receipt, the system will determine whether it is exempted or not and what QC type it belongs to, which policy to follow. And then even after receipt, if there is a need, we can use generate QC to extract it from the location back to QC pending location to do another round of testing if need be. For the reject, then we can potentially return it to the vendor or return it to production floor. For the scrap, it's just left at the scrap area awaiting cost accounting to review, maybe eventually scrap it using internal usage. So that in a very quick is a very quick overview of the quality control modules. Technically, it has only one prerequisite module, that is IC. So even without PO, even without MO, if the client just wants to do IC receipt, I can actually add QC module and then do quality control for them. But obviously, most of the clients using QC have PO, and then most of them can also have MO. But the only prerequisite is Sage inventory control. So that uh, I think is a quick overview of manufacturing, shop floor control, planning, and quality control. Any questions?
Okay, we had a question with quality control. Can a
Mhm.
PO invoice be applied to a PO receipt before QC inspects all associated quantities?
Yes, in Sage that is possible because the receiving and the invoicing are separate transactions. It's the same as being able to do a return after you have already did a PO invoice. So the QC transaction will not prevent PO invoice to answer that question.
Okay. Another question going back to the manufacturing. Child bombs have to be
Mhm.
included. Well, this is production planning, sorry. Child bombs have to be included in the item group as well?
No need. So when we explode the bomb, it can detect child bombs inside. It will be a full explosion of the bomb.
Okay, great. Are the new features you showed in production planning, like the item group, available in trading MRP as well?
Yes. So that's a very good question. So I wasn't able to highlight it today, but trading MRP is the spin-off of production planning for trading companies. So if the client doesn't have any MO, they can use trading MRP instead of PP. And to answer the question, the features of IP and PP are identical.
Perfect. Another question, can you record the results of your QC inspections in AC chat, making an entry on a mobile device?
Not yet. For now, it's not yet covered. AC chat is not yet linked to quality controls, but that is a very good idea that we need to look at in the future.
Okay, something for the roadmap.
Mhm.
And there was a question about manufacturing runtime is per piece, but you may have already answered that one.
Yeah. When we set up the bomb, the manufacturing runtime is per piece. It's not per batch.
All right. And those are all the questions from this session.
All right.
Oh, sorry, one more came in. Can
Mhm.
you be on Sage 300 version 2024 and have MF and PP with the latest version 7.3? And the answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. The
Yes.
cutoff for us is 2018. So anything above 2018 can use the latest versions of any of our modules.
Yes. And one more question. Will this be uploaded to AutoSimply's YouTube channel?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, because we do plan to put it on the RLA YouTube channel as well, but we are going to require some editing to take place. So it'll take a few days.
Yeah. We can do the editing and send it back to you for sure.
Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up the final session for today? Howard. Okay. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much. Excellent training. So, thank you for this great feedback and thank you for your time. We appreciate you committing, as much time as you could over the last 2 days to review these AutoSimply solutions with us. As you know, they're a great partner of ours. They do wonderful support. So, we appreciate your support in the channel with your customers. Thanks very much, everyone, for attending and have a wonderful weekend.